Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Richard Lewis Show. It is me, a bearded egg, about to interview someone who is not a bearded egg and is, in fact, a fantastically talented member of the esports talent pool, a journalist, a host, a former manager. It is Yinsu Collins, wearer of many hats and good friend. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I shaved today, so that's why I'm not as bearded as I would usually be. Yeah, it's good to be here.
It's great, looking smooth, unlike some of us, a bit grizzled. So yeah, look, I'm going to start with the journalist stuff because it always fascinates me because that's obviously my bread and butter. And you are currently employed in that capacity as well as doing this other thing on the side. So, first question out of the gate. Would it be right to label you a journalist kind of first and foremost?
I'd say so. Proudly, for sure. Yeah. Although I'll be much less these days than I used to. I think, obviously, I started out as a sports journalist and I was really what's the word? Tunnel visioned into wanting to be a sports reporter. I just wanted to go to matches and I wanted to write about players and I wanted to report on the drama and all of that stuff. But obviously going into esports, I still a little bit of that, but it is still very different, I'd say, from traditional sports. And obviously these days, with most of my focus into kind of like video and online content creation and also hosting, not so much in the writing department anymore, to my own dismay, because I would like to write a bit more, but I just don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just don't have time.
Yeah, a lot of people like to leave that behind. I always make the joke that basically in the grand scheme of sort of journalists, you've got, your news writers who are just filing copy, and they'll do that a dozen times a day in the journalism, as it's called. Then
Yeah.
you eventually get to you can be a reporter. Maybe you can check in with a source every now and then, actually write some news that has some sort of independent value. Then maybe you become either an investigative journalist or, and then a columnist. That's the dream for a lot of people. You write one article a week, if that, and it's 1,000 words and you get paid loads and you don't have to go to the press room. And then eventually you can leave that behind and just shout into a webcam. and that's what I do now. I've reached the laziest, fattest peak of journalism that you can do.
I miss the press room though. I think that's the one thing I miss the most. I miss the press room a lot. Obviously, in the beginning of my career, I did do a lot of traditional newspaper writing. I feel like in the UK, at least, the route that I took, studying journalism and so on, that was the natural progression. There weren't many kind of places offering to do any on-camera work or reporting. That was really, you have to be doing it for 2-3 years until you get to that stage, and
or have a family member at the BBC.
Or that. But I kind of then got into Sky Sports News to help out with the actual producing of the program, which still involved I guess script writing and that kind of stuff, which was really fun. But that's a 9 to 5, right? You're stuck in a newsroom all day. You're not really going anywhere. And for me, I did look around the newsroom a lot and I was thinking oh, this is going to be so tough. It's going to get so one person a year, if that, gets sort of plucked out of that environment and you get to actually go out and do field work and reporting or like you said, the investigative stuff. And in esports, everyone can do it. In esports, it's you don't need any experience. You don't need any sort of that traditional kind of gatekeeping of progression. If you want to write a story, you can write it, as you know, you don't even have to have a publication, just have it in a blog or whatever.
Yeah. And
that for me was just way too attractive of an option compared to kind of being stuck doing something for 10 years before I get an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it was one of the reasons that I ended up here in esports too, because first of all, I was a philosophy student, which is a fucking terrible idea. And because there's only 2 jobs, one is philosophy lecturer and the other is philosopher.
I did classics, so it's
right.
the same. It's
exactly
the same.
Yeah, my ex did classics. The philosophy lectures were so insufferable. I used to go to her classics lectures and I was like, maybe I should have done this.
Yeah.
But then a sort of media department opened where I studied, and it was brand new, shiny. And they said, we're going to do, broadcast journalism and journalism. So I jumped in. But what I found, and I don't know if this was similar to your experience, was that basically once you got to the end of that, and and the networking you built up, and the colleagues you built up during that time, they all said, right, well, we're off to London now to do a bunch of like really unfeasible, untenable, internships essentially. And back then it was like, if you were willing to work for £9,000 a year at a paper and sleep on someone's floor in London, they would maybe let you into the big show as a journalist. And so I said, fuck that. That sounds like hell on earth. And I went back to the back to the Northeast where my family lived at the time, and basically was pissing away the education, and then started writing about video games and blogging, and managed to snowball it into this. So did you run into, kind of similar barriers?
I'm very stubborn. Like, I think it's my biggest strength and also biggest weakness, in the sense that I will back myself in any situation, even though like I'm clearly not, it's not like going to end up well for me.
Yeah.
I like to try again, and maybe try the one extra time that's not needed to try, and then I'm like, okay, now I accept I failed. That I'm sort of that kind of person. So with university, I actually changed course during my uni. So I was like, also just side tangent, I don't know how, I'm a firm believer as you don't know what the fuck you want to do when you're 18, and why are we being forced to choose? Because when I went to uni, it was £9,000 a year to go to uni, and I got to choose where I want to be for the next 3 years and pay like £30,000 for it. And if I don't make that choice when I'm 18, by the time I'm 21, I'm going to be behind, and everyone else is going to be doing great. And that pressure for me was like horrible at university. Normalize changing courses, that's what I want to say, because I changed course, and I'm glad I did, because I went from classics. Again, I was staring down the barrel of, do I want to be a classics professor or do I want to be an archaeologist? And neither. So I changed course, and I changed after my second year, and I did film. So I stayed 3 extra years at university, and even though I didn't really want to do anything in film, it gave me enough time to just like stew and realize what I wanted to do, which at the time was radio, a sports radio. And then after that, I realized in order to be like a journalist or be on the radio, you have to have, I don't know if you have an NCTJ or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it turned out to be, for what I ended up doing, an utter waste of fucking time, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like everybody was telling me, if you want to go write for like the Times, whatever, or go and be on the BBC, you have to have this qualification. And I just thought, oh, I better just get it. I've spent 5 years in education already. What's the 6th year? Like, that's not gonna affect me that much. So I went and got that, and it was during my time at university when I realized you could do esports stuff. Like, I didn't realize I watched a lot of COD like back in the days, and that was about it, but I didn't realize there were people that wrote about it. And then I watched League of Legends after. I was like, there's people writing about League of Legends. I think I watched an interview with Xpeke, and I was like, they're getting interviewed. This is madness. This is really similar to sports. Like, it's kind of crazy this exists. So I just kept up my interest in it through uni, got my qualification in journalism, thought, I love football so much, I want to go into football. And then I realized, maybe like you said, like, did I want to kind of slave away doing something, getting underpaid, slaving away, having no free time, putting everything into something that had barely any progression or rewards? It was just like another a cog in this massive wheel. And then I kind of just took a gamble in doing some esports stuff at Sky, because nobody wanted to do it. It was the London major, the CSGO major, and there was this story just flying around being like, somebody needs to cover this. And I was like, I'll cover it. I'm gonna watch the major anyway, so I might as well just do something around it. And then after that, I think that it just became like I was the esports person, and every esports story
just ends up on your desk, right?
No matter what it was, it could have been the most arbitrary newser, which even I felt like didn't deserve to be any coverage, the press release kind of stuff. And yeah, that was actually really nice to have a niche in a place where everybody was there to do football and only football, maybe cricket every now and then. So it felt quite nice to have a niche. But then I would read other people's stuff and I just thought, I don't think my stuff is like good enough. My stuff is churning out like the newsers, the press release stuff. It's nothing original. But I wasn't really getting that many opportunities to do that until I kind of pestered them over and over and over and over and over again and be like, please just send me to an event. Send me to an event. I can maybe get some original content and start doing that kind of stuff. And I think I got a little bit lucky because after like I'd say maybe 20 30 emails of me just constantly spamming the editors and stuff, they were like, okay, just go. Just go see what happens. So I did go to the major. That was super fun. And then after that I went to the LEC and Worlds and stuff, and it kind of just snowballed because I guess they were starting to see the value of esports. As you know, every big brand, media, publication, whatever, they have the intention of wanting to get into esports because they think that that's where the kids are, that's where like the new audience are. But I don't think many of them have like, they have the intention to, but I don't believe they're good intentions. So more often than not, it kind of fails when they don't give a shit about it. They're like, oh, we just need this done. I don't care the quality, I don't care what's in it, just get it done. Which there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that with the media companies these days. I think it's almost like when you've worked, I can understand it, because when you've worked in any line of work for a while, you're going to see fads and you're going to see trends. And I'm sure, when fucking Zoomers were eating Tide Pods or whatever, right? Like, there's some jaded 50-year-old journalist who's like, oh fucking hell, it's this again, is it?
Oh my God, yeah.
It's satanic panic, Dungeons and Dragons bullshit again, people planking, it's that again, and it's like they've seen the trends come and go, and they probably have a mental attitude that frames esports in the same way. Oh, people playing video games for money, well, that's not going to be, and they don't realize we're sort of, it's definitely not a fad or a trend, because we're like 20 years in and we've had a 10-year period of like sustained growth, once we bounced back from the global recession. So it's a shame, but eventually the good news is obviously the more and more people that it's kind of normalized around, the more and more people do treat it with the respect it sort of deserves.
I think definitely had a chip on my shoulder, because it was nice being like that you're the esports person, like if I have a question I can come and ask you. But after a while I kind of thought it's not that hard to understand. It's really like from a professional point of view, like from a storytelling point of view, because in the end of the day we're writing things because we want to tell a story. So for me, I'm like, it's really not that difficult to understand why this is a entertaining piece or why this is important. And if I had a penny for every comment that was thrown at me of, oh, you just sit around and watch people play FIFA, or like, why can't you just play the game? Like, why are you paying to, like, oh my God, I had to deal with that every single day.
It's like moron bingo it's rough.
It was really, really, really draining having to kind of deal with trying to somehow defend an interest that I had. But it was funny because for Valorant Champions that just gone in December, Sergio Aguero was watching it. His team was playing in it. He was really involved in it, and he posted like an Instagram story of him watching Champions on his private jet. And for me, and it was funny because like in the frame it was just my head, like 1 second of my face, and I started freaking out. And I thought about all those people that idolized footballers that I used to work with day in day out, and I just thought, I wish they could see this. I wish they could see that something that they thought was childish and, like stupid and not worth all of the hype and money, whatever. Like your idol, Sergio Aguero, cares about this. So maybe it's not as bad as it originally was.
Always reminds me of this story, and I've told this a few times, but I think it was in the 2002 World Cup. You had South Korea were up against, I think it was Italy. Anyway, they were the underdog team, and they had a pep talk done by like the leading StarCraft, Brood War players.
Yeah,
it came into the dressing room to pep up their national football team. So, it's one of those things. It's like and you see Neymar essentially like paying to sort of play with Ziwu because he wants to have that experience. So it's definitely come a long way. When, like I say, when I first got into it, it literally, you couldn't have made yourself more unpopular. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I how do you spend your spare time? Oh, I pay my own money to go and watch people play competitive video games in a warehouse in Telford. It's like, fucking hell.
Yeah, we've definitely come a long way from that, but I've made peace with it now. I think now I'm actually more involved in esports, because at the time I had like one foot in each boat. Kind of, I was doing sports, I was working 7 days a week, which in hindsight was very unhealthy, but I still do that now, but it's kind of more 6 days and 7. But at the time I was like, oh, I want to try esports, but I don't want to give up sport, and I don't want to commit to one thing in case it goes wrong or whatever. And I think that's what was stressing me out, because knowing that, like, I just wish I could take people to an event. That's like my biggest wish. Like, for anybody that has any criticism, or I see parents like, oh, why are my kids watching like people shoot each other in a game, whatever. Just want to take them to an event, because I don't believe anyone that's a fan of entertainment would go to an event and be like, oh, I don't get it. Like, I just don't believe that.
I had the same thing when we were doing TV in America. We used to give the tickets away essentially. And, because we'd have about 200 people per taping. And so we'd give away the tickets, and, kids would want to come. And then that means, got to bring a guardian, parent, whatever. And so the parents would turn up, and they would be sour-faced and miserable. Like, it'd be like fucking divorced dads. Like, this is how I get to see my fucking son come and watch these people play fucking video games in the studio. And so anyway, and you would see these parents come week after week, and by week 3, week 4, this dude who looked miserable to be there the first time I saw him is in a Cloud9 fucking jersey, like cheering it on. And it's like, if people give it a chance, it's got all of the elements of like entertainment, of sport. There is something there that you can sort of cling on to find an appreciation of it. And I saw that time and time again, honestly.
Yeah, I think as at least recent times, I've definitely probably gotten more invested and emotional over like esports events than I do traditional sport, which has been really strange of a transition.
Especially because everybody, right?
Yeah, of course. I just think there are moments that are just more kind of entertaining. I don't know, maybe I'm biased now, but sometimes with the sports, it's quite easy to zone out because it's very kind of samey, football especially, I feel like. Just people doing the same thing week in, week out. Sometimes it could be, a little bit different with the stories, but I feel like esports, especially Valorant, I guess now I'm more ingrained into Valorant, and it's the first year of Valorant. There's been so much kind of like stories and drama and entertainment and just crazy stuff that's been happening, which I really think is right up there with some other traditional sporting moments.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely a crazy time for the game. I mean, Valorant in particular. We'll talk a bit about Valorant because that's kind of your bread and butter. That's where you ply your trade. But yeah, it's like it's a real interesting sort of time for the game, because I think we've hit that sweet spot I talked about, and that was when you were going to see the people that were there because they couldn't get a paycheck in other games, or the people that were a little bit past their prime, past their sell-by date, let's say, and they're about to run into a generation of kids that have been raised on Minecraft, Fortnite, and have fucking unbelievable reactions, and they've been grinding this game for 2 years now, and the only thing they lack is maturity, experience, and probably a little bit of socialization, if we're honest about it. And these two worlds are now colliding to create this new landscape where, it feels like every day I'm hearing about like some 16, 17-year-old phenom joining a new team, or some of the old guard making way, returning to CSGO. So yeah, this is like, I think this is the pivotal moment where the foundations for Valorant, its future get laid, I think, this year.
I will say though, I mean, I'm not usually critical of any of the scene, but I will say the disparity between what some of the old guard brings in terms of, like you mentioned, the
Mhm.
maturity, the
Mhm.
experience, just general, I guess, how to behave like a human,
Yes.
compared to the ones that maybe weren't necessarily successful in other games, and they kind of came into Valorant for new opportunities, or they haven't really learned how to behave, because at the same time, Valorant is the one place I've seen just astonishing amount of nonsense, like on a daily basis, that kind of blows my mind. Like, it really blows my mind that individuals that want to be signed to big orgs will tweet obscenity on Twitter and think that that's going to be completely fine. I feel like we're at a stage now that you can't just be good at the game. Like, I don't think that's enough to be like a pro player anymore. You have to be good at the game, be a good teammate, behave, and not be a, I don't want to say anything bad, but I will say not be a piece of shit.
No,
See it.
the problem you've got right now is that I've done this dance a dozen times easily. At the start of an esport, when you do get this generation moving in, the new school, they've never been involved in any other esport. They've never had a job. Some of them don't go to higher education. They're not in a social environment where behavior and your profession are kind of like, entwined. And so what ends up happening a lot of the time, and trust me, it's like, it's not that I condone like bad behavior, but I do feel deeply sorry for teenagers, essentially, that don't realize when you fuck up now, it's not like when I fucked up. Nobody will remember my teenage fuck ups. They remember all the ones I did as an adult. Reddit will tell you about that. But, the ones I got away with, the ones I made as a teenager. Unfortunately, if you want to come into esports now, not only are there more recording mechanisms for your fuck ups, the fuck ups are amplified because you're in the popular game, trying to go professional. Everyone's going to scrutinize everything you've done and said. And you might be defiant now at 17, but 19-year-old you is going to fucking hate 17-year-old you for what you're doing. So it's tough because there's not a lot of forgiveness on the internet these days. I mean, that's the real talk.
I am sympathetic. I'm very, like, and now you've mentioned it, like, obviously, if I think back to when I was 16, God, I would be horrified if the things that I did when I was 16 or said are broadcasted on the internet. I'm very sympathetic about that. But in terms of internet not forgetting things, I'm sure you know firsthand more than anyone else, but it's definitely my first taste of it. Because as a journalist before, like, nobody really bothered me or looked my way or had any opinions about me. And I will say that the taste of it now, after my first like full year and a half to this point of being somewhat more in the light of being scrutinized, it's very tough. It's really, really tough. So I can't imagine dealing with that as a 16-year-old. But then again, I do feel like a lot of the times the scrutiny towards me are things that I can't control. It's not like I've gone on Twitter and started a drama with somebody. It's more like people are just going to be unhappy with whatever.
I think you're the opposite. I think you're too drama averse. So we'll talk about that in a second.
I try my best.
But so what type of shit have you been going through? What's been happening? Tell Uncle Richard all about it.
It's a lot. I mean, actually, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. I've become definitely better. And I'm going to be open about this because this is one other thing I feel like should be normalized just in society is therapy. I don't think anybody should be ashamed for going to therapy or seeking therapy or just attending therapy. I went into therapy right after the first strike stuff. I've been in therapy before for like nothing related to this, but I was fine. Like, I got better. I stopped going. I went from going like every week to every 2 weeks to every month to just stop going flat out because you don't need to anymore. But after the whole first strike drama, which I know you covered before, it just got progressively worse. That, like, a lot of stuff I've kind of been more accustomed to now because I see her so often.
Right.
But I think it's just, yeah, I don't know what, actually I would love to know why some of the grievances other people have, because people don't usually tell me their grievances. People just jump straight to like, go kill yourself, that kind of stuff. So if I'm honest, I'm not really sure why, but
I can give you a window in if you want. I can tell you.
But I mean, some of the stuff is just so bizarre sometimes. Like there was just one occasion, just in general, where a group of people thought I was like a diversity hire, which, you know, it is what it is. And it just got turned into like, oh, you know, she's XYZ and I can't even criticize her because she's just going to play the diversity card, even though she is a diversity hire. So there was no criticisms. It was just like, I would say what I really feel about her, but I won't, because I don't want to be seen as someone who's like racist or sexist. But let's be honest, she's only there because of a diversity hire. That was like a whole thing for a while I had to deal with. But I just kind of ignored it after a while. The one that did get to me, which is so dumb, like I know this is so stupid, and I've spoken about it with people and I know it's stupid, is that a lot of people like said I was fat, and I know it's really silly because like it's not something that you should take to heart in that kind of scenario, but I was reading comments like, oh, Sean's looking good today, it's a shame that he sat next to the fat one of Valorant, and I was like, what? Why is that kind of like the reputation I've garnered? But it was so much. It was like the quantity of it is what got to me. And I was just kind of like, oh gosh, I felt really, I don't know. I've never had people judge me like that before. I just didn't think people cared.
What's going on there is, right, and I've experienced a little bit of this, and obviously I am, shock horror, overweight, and I am balding. And I am, and I am old. I know I'm blowing your mind here. And obviously as well, I'm a little bit older than the average person in esports because I've already been doing this shit for 16 years. So, what people do is they create an avatar, right, of you, and then they attribute things they are themselves either insecure about or just find generally repugnant in others. And they ascribe those qualities to the avatar of you in their mind. I've had people swear blind to me, like, I weigh more than 300 pounds. And it's like, dude, never. At my heaviest, I was like 250 when I was in America, and Southern food hit me like a ton of bricks. They say that, like, oh, you know, like I'm balding, not bald with a big D at the end, you know. But they think that because they're Zoomers, a lot of them as well, they think they'll never be bald. Their hair will last forever.
Oh God!
Right? Bless them. They're in for the rude awakening. Yeah. Go have a look. Go have a look at some of your family members. And by the way, it's not just your mother's side. That's a myth. Have a look. So, you know, they throw all that shit at this non-real version of you. That's all it is. And it's like, when you realize that, it does become a bit easier to deal with, because, you know, we used to hypercritically go through all of the hate, like unbelievably. I would constantly expose myself to it in a really negatively unhealthy, you know, action. And I would, but I got to a point where I was assessing it and going, but like, that's not true. And that's not true. That's definitely not true. And so when but these people utterly believe it. So the disconnect is with them. It's not with me. It's like, you can call me fat and I go, yeah, I need to lose some fucking weight, you know, because I'm not delusional. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I think once you can sort of like focus on that, it's definitely a them thing, it gets easier.
Yeah, I mean, that's what therapy was for, right? Because I think that the reason that got to me, because it really took me back, because it's not something that I really think about, I think, and I'm used to some of the like the racial slurs, I'm used to the sex, like I'm used to it now. So for that, I'm actually pretty good with that not bothering me anymore. But I just think for me, in the beginning, I was like, this is so weird. what is going on? And then after a while, I think it's purely because like the comments that were directed to me were never about my work. Like this sounds so ungrateful, but I would love to see a comment of someone saying, oh, that interview wasn't up to par, or that this piece of writing was not adequate, or, you know, she's rubbish at being a host. Like, me seeing those kind of comments, I get it. That's like something I can at least improve on. That's criticism. But it was only about my looks and only about my weight, and all the way through champions, that I stopped looking after about day 3. I was like, it's not worth going into Twitch during the shows. But the fan stuff, like, I agree with you. I think the disconnect is, I've come to learn now after a couple of years that it sometimes is so wild. But I do think the things that I really does probably hurt me the most, and I take to heart, is kind of like peer opinions and criticisms, because obviously since the first strike thing, I didn't make the best first impression, I think, in a scene of people that didn't know me. And I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and hopefully they give me another chance.
Surely no talent took issue with that, right?
No. Talent, not so much. I mean, peers is more of like the people in the scene. I mean, some talent, I guess, did.
So that includes players, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, with the biggest fucking mollycoddled babies in the pyramid of entitlement that is esports.
But I guess, like, it kind of affects my work, because I know players that won't do interviews with me, like, ever. They will just refuse interviews with me.
Yeah, fuck them.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I honestly wish I could develop that attitude. The Boast always does the same. He doesn't care. This is the other weird thing, that some people that don't like him I can't compute that either, because he's never done anything wrong his entire life on the internet. But for me, it's just kind of like I have anxiety naturally. It might not seem so, but I don't leave my house. I'm like a pretty I'd say I'm pretty introverted person when I'm just in my own space, when I'm not on camera. But I don't really I tend to just try and stay away from everything, because everything gives me anxiety. I hate just overthinking and just being anxious about stuff. But ever since the first strike thing, I know players since then, some of them will never give me interviews. Some of them are still really, really upset with me still now. And every now and then they'll voice it publicly. I still haven't been able to get away with all of that, which has been really it's just a shame, because I've tried really hard to be like, hey, I'm not going to upset anyone again. I will do my best to not upset people. But I just always somehow end up upsetting someone. And I don't really know what to do about it, because I would like to interview those players. Like, I'm not holding grudges. It's fine. I accept, like, we have differences in opinions, but it's impeding my work. And it stresses me out in a sense that there are certain storylines I cannot tell, because I know if I mention someone's name, even if it's in a good way or a bad way, whatever, that just starts a whole load of drama on the internet that I do not want to be associated with.
I mean, so
it's just so, like,
you will
why.
find on a long enough time scale, especially the direction Valorant will go in and the overarching control Riot will exert over it, that those players that be it trying to be slick now, and I saw some of them I have respect for, and pretty disappointed in some of their attitudes. But like when it comes to, talking to journalists and they're like talking down to them or refusing to answer questions or asking to have journalists removed because they asked questions they didn't like. All of that's going out the window very soon, guys. So enjoy getting to flex now before you get cuckolded by Riot Games and made to do interviews with these media outlets you think you have dominion over now. Because guess what? You need to shut the fuck up, get on the server, play your games, win your games, and then do your media commitments. That's the Faustian pact players enter into. And you're not going to, for an emerging game controlled by a developer who wants to have rich storylines and as much publicity, and the orgs want the publicity, it's not going to fly for much longer. So, that's just the reality. That's just the reality. Yeah. You will absolutely have the last laugh on this front.
And honestly, it sounds weird, but I'm looking forward to that. First of all, I'm very much looking forward to that.
It's delicious when it happens.
But it just sounds weird for me, because I'm very much like at a stage where people make mistakes, or everybody has different opinions. It's fine. But for me, once I'm on a broadcast, when I'm in a press room, when I'm writing a story, that's irrelevant. That's not relevant to what we're doing. And for me, the inability of some people to kind of separate my profession and work and whatever they think of me is perplexing, and I try to fix that. I don't know if it was obvious I've tried to fix that this year, but I've really tried hardly to fix that. And doesn't matter what I think of certain people, behaviors, decisions, whatever, I would not publicly comment on stuff in the hopes that people understand that, you know, me as a person and me as a host or me as a journalist is not synonymous. Like, they're not the synonymous thing, and they do not have to like me as a person. They do not have to want anything to do with me as a person. But if we're working on a broadcast and I have to tell a storyline of your team, and you get offended by me even saying your name, it's like, I don't know what else I can do. It's just, it's okay for people to stop me from doing my job, but it's not okay for me to defend myself. I think that's just the bizarre thing of this whole situation.
You will find weird rules that aren't really rules. People just tell you the rules or pretend the rules, and you have to play by them. But let's
sorry. The best part is that, like, everything that happened at First Strike, the people that I might have heard, whatever, we're fine now. Like, I've talked it over with every single person that's been involved in that situation, and all of us are professional. We're fine. We move on. But it's other people that aren't fine with this. And for me, I don't know, maybe I'm too idealistic, but sometimes I feel like if two people had a disagreement where there was a bit of drama and they sort it out, everyone else just get over it. Just get over it. Like, it doesn't involve you.
I mean, look, so just for those who are watching this now, I mean, you can go and watch my videos I made about it, but you know, the reality is that, so first, like, the incidents that occurred were, the first one is obviously the Soulcast incident, where you made a for me very clear throwaway joke about him being kicked because he had a bad game. Your unfortunate mistake there was probably we made a joke at the expense of the softest pro I've seen in any competitive sport.
Me and Dom have talked about it now. Like,
I'm sure you're all right. But so I'm literally just talking from my perspective. This isn't to drag you into it from what I think. But I mean, you know, like, this is somebody who, like, when they lose a game or he plays bad, he's on Twitter basically saying, "Oh God, no, my whole world's over." It's like, just don't do that, because you're not going to get any reply. Like, those little dopamine hits you get for people going, "You'll be back stronger, bro," or whatever. It's not worth the window you're opening that people get to abuse you through. And it's not going to help, because clearly, if you had that sort of like competitive mindset where you could shut that stuff out, you wouldn't be on Twitter in the first place. So that's the first thing. The second thing was the artist situation.
That's what's made. That's the major one. That's the one that I feel like people would never forgive me for.
But I mean, the idea that a guy who was caught on a recording literally saying, "I would be willing to fix games but then I didn't do it because you pissed me off," and intimating he's been cleared by Riot for fixing games. Yes, because the games you have said on the recording you were willing to fix, talking to known match fixers, you didn't fix because they upset you. How is that a sort of like glowing, clean bill of health? It's bullshit. And unfortunately, the idea that he sort of gets to take some fucking moral high ground after the fact, after that, is a disgrace. He should never have been in G2. That player should be ostracized.
Honestly, for me, when the whole match fixing thing was going on, I actually was doing a story on. I was trying to do a story on it, at least, and I spoke to Artis, and this is an interview that you guys can go check out if you want. I spoke to Artis, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't speak to him about it, if I was gonna like try and look into what was going on.
Oh, I'm sure he can name names.
So I remember, and I was pretty upfront about it, and he was really upfront about it, and at the time, that was it for me. I was like, okay, I'm looking into this thing. I spoke to some of the people that cleared him, like behind the scenes directly. I spoke to him, and I got the interview out, and I was like, okay, this is the conclusion of everything. Cool. And I even said to him, I think during the interview, like, thanks for being open about this, whatever. And we just moved on. And I had never accused him of anything. Oh gosh, that's not really within my nature. And whatever I think is not important, because that's like my personal opinions about whatever is not important, because I had a job to do and I did my job. And then at First Strike, I don't know how else to defend myself. I've tried so hard. I never accused him of anything. I
No.
didn't even make a joke about it because it's not within my nature. It stressed me out so much. And all it was Jonas, who is lovely and made some kind of a bet trying to spice up the broadcast, make it entertaining, and it just happens that Artist was about to play that match, and I was like, oh, he's a character, like he would definitely get involved, like this is his kind of thing. And I forgot about the backdrop and the context of all this, because why would I think that? Because that's not something that I just think about. Unfortunately, it kind of got blew out of hand, and he's very influential in the scene, and has a lot of support, and a lot of his friends who are like pro players and whatever just really thought I insidiously, like with malice of forethought, was after him to try and paint him out as a match fixer, which I never did. And to this day, I still get people saying that I was like a bitch or a cunt or a horrible person.
People who never heard the original quote, which is the other problem you have with internet noise.
It was really like that for me. I didn't know how to deal with that. I still don't, even after a whole year of trying to deal with it. But again, I know he still feels a lot of resentment, which I feel bad for, obviously, because maybe he does genuinely feel that I did that, in which case I do have sympathy. But all of like the other pro players that are not involved whatsoever, and like you said, didn't watch the original clip, just have this kind of impression. They will not let it go.
I mean, it's really weird to me. There's this like trend at the moment, because there's a very sort of similar drama that's kind of going on over in Dota at the moment with Kyle. I just did a podcast with him before that drama kicked off, funnily enough. But basically he like said, Alliance, they were like celebrating like they'd won a game, but it was a draw. And he said, basically, you should save those types of celebrations for the real W, and then clarified, that he meant because of the energy and the adrenaline, and he's been a player. And, so that was just, everyone's like, oh no, let them enjoy the moment. And why are you trying to police people's fun? And all it's like, it's a former pro and a pundit giving an opinion about the fucking sport he covers. You're the weirdos. Like if you're the fucking weirdos, because you're the ones that think that's like something abnormal. But then like the Alliance owner come out and called him a dog and fucking false accusations about paying for sex and all this like weird shit. Said that she hopes he dies alone. Oh, it was fucking wild. And me and Duncan, we had 4 days at the major of relative peace, where everyone was like, can't believe those guys have been hired. We had 4 good days where everyone was like, actually, yeah, they are pretty entertaining. I suppose I could tolerate them for the major. Good to see Richard back, actually. And then we said something about heroics over celebrating when they went 3-2 in the groups. And they were front page Reddit threads and HLTV threads demanding that we be fired, removed from the broadcast, and cast out of the community we've contributed to for over a decade. So the thing that pisses me off is just this, like, that type of commentary, even if your joke was intended, which it wasn't, but even if it was intended, that's the type of joke that would get made in a sports broadcast, a sports podcast, on air by pundits all of the time in every sport. It's like no one's ever heard of Roy Keane. It's fucking crazy. And then you come to esports and it's like, what? I just have to pretend players are perfect even when they're fucking shit houses. Like, no, I don't think so. No.
I mean, I think for me, because I'm not an analyst on the broadcast, so I tend to be very reserved with my opinions. So that's why it confuses me, because I don't feel like, sometimes I feel like maybe I'm the one that's misunderstanding the whole situation, but then I take a step back and I don't feel like I'm a particularly controversial person, but for some reason other people do. And I kind of fail to understand it. So I'm just like at a stalemate of me constantly trying to be like, no, I didn't do this, believe me. And then other people say, no, you're a horrible cunt. So no one wins. No one wins.
In terms of the gigs you've worked, I mean, do you feel that it's impacted on you potentially being hired?
I don't know sometimes, but I'm not 100% sure. It definitely impacts my shows a lot. The anxiety that I got for, at least I think Champions was the first show that I didn't have as bad anxiety, but the other ones is crippling. Like when I mean, like I cannot, sometimes I don't know how I do it. I'm just in like a bit of a daze, but I'm so paranoid. Like the paranoia I get of like I need to make sure I phrase things properly. I don't accidentally make a joke that isn't funny, or I upset someone. That was really, really all I focused on, I'd say, right up until Champion. So for 11 months of my life, every single time I was working and watching back all my VODs and VOD reviewing myself, the number one thing I always try to look out for was like my phrasing and not being controversial, because that's not the life that I want to live. And I don't have that, my opinions aren't even that strong, honestly. I don't have that many strong opinions. I just
you don't need strong opinions to be controversial in
yeah, I just get on with it.
So look, let's talk a little bit about, you know, because it's kind of interesting that you go from journalism into broadcast talent, on-air talent. You're probably doing the most fucking stressful job. It's why it blows my mind that you tell me you're an anxious person. Because when you're a host, like pretty much, you know, the entire show is on you, like in a way. Not obviously, you know, the talent, everyone else is doing their job, but in terms of what you do as a host, you have to direct the traffic. You've got to get everybody shut up before you go to a commercial break. You've got to give the analysts enough time to talk and get their points, and you've got to be fair with how you distribute asking the questions. You've got to know everything that's going on. Sometimes you'll just hear fucking weird, crazy noises in your ear. Sometimes you'll hear fucking nothing at all, and you won't know that you meant to throw to a break, and you just have to guess from the camera movement. And by the fact that it's panning to the right slowly now, I guess that means we're going to a break. We'll see you soon. And yet, you know, you live in this mad world, and it's like you've chosen to put yourself there.
It's I guess this is a bit of a paradox in the sense that it's quite, I find it when I'm in the zone, I find it quite meditative, as in like you don't think about anything else. Like there's only like 2 or 3 things you think about. Whereas, for the rest of my life, I overthink about everything, and I spend way too much overthinking. So when I'm in the zone, it's like before I go on camera, it's fine. It's the retrospective times I get really anxious that I'm just like, oh no, like watching back every single minute of every single VOD to make sure that nothing was bad or went wrong. But in the zone, like you said, the amount of times where there was one time where we were doing an online show and someone hacked into our TeamSpeak and just started blasting EDM music, and I couldn't hear my analysts, and I was just like smiling like none of us could hear each other. So that was a fun day. But I think because I just liked storytelling. I want to be able to tell stories, and I like content. And I find everything super interesting. And my favorite part of the entire show is asking questions, which is the majority of what I do anyway. So like asking my analyst questions or players interview questions, whatever. If I could do that all day, if I was given the chance every day, that's the thing I enjoy the most. The analytical parts I like as well. I don't think I ever have really what it takes to be like an analyst. Casting, no, never. I don't think my brain thinks fast enough to be a caster. But like watching people like you and like Machine, Shocks, and seeing how you guys all do things differently, and how you ask questions and how you kind of like goad people or like direct things, to me is just such a fascinating like craft. And I will admit that I've stolen a lot from all of you. Hey, constantly.
It's what we all do, you know. I never felt like I would ever be a host. Really weird, when I came through in esports, I had a lot of people telling me that I just wasn't I wasn't a good person to do a podcast with.
Who told you that?
I don't want to name names and dredge it up, but industry people that I respected. I got overlooked for a couple of gigs, and I thought I could do it because I'd studied broadcast journalism and I thought I could be a host. But everyone was telling me no. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just focus on the journalism anyway. And it wasn't until Robert Olin at DreamHack, and he basically put me in as a host because he thought it would be funny. to do it. He put me in as a host. My first ever hosting event was for StarCraft, not for Counter-Strike.
Oh, damn.
And it was it's a game I've never played competitively. I've played like one ladder match in my entire life, and I've done the single player campaign for the purposes of reviewing the game, and then that was it. And now I was hosting it with like guys like In Control and Apollo and Todd and Moonglade, all the broadcast talent from that era, and I'm the host. And so what helped me, fortunately, was Apollo, who had been a host. He got to be an analyst when I came along for the ride. He was telling me, like, this is what you have to say, and if you ask this question, it'll be good, and I can tell you about this, and this is why they won. And basically, I was like puppeteered for the first few shows, but I wouldn't even have had the chance, because there was this idea in the industry that I was either. Some people said it was because I was too forceful a personality. Others said it was because I lacked any and all charisma. That was real. That was real feedback I got from an industry person. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't feel so bad anymore, because I think people definitely the industry people have been much more like kinder to me than I could, even.
It's a kind of place that it was back in the day. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't imagine if someone said that about you now. I think that would be like...
Sure, a lot of people might still agree, honestly. But it's interesting that you kind of like study the craft, because I think not a lot of people realize how much actually goes into hosting. It really is. It's simultaneously a lot of pressure and also not a lot of reward, because you have to essentially put your personality away to do what's good for the show, and you're just like the air traffic controller. Everyone thanks the pilot, right? When the plane lands safe, they don't think about the motherfuckers in the radar towers that basically make sure you don't go through another plane's airspace and kill everyone, a la Breaking Bad. You never hear about those dudes. I always think that's essentially what a host is. Like, everyone loves the analysts, everyone loves, the commentators. A host does a lot of lifting behind the scenes on the show, which sounds like I'm just tooting my own horn. I'm fucking retired now anyway.
No, that's a really good analogy. That's exactly how I feel. I think there's a few like interviews I'm super proud of, and like in questions where I feel like, oh, this could be either like a banging question, or this player could just tell me to fuck off.
Yeah.
But it's like the community receptions to those kind of interviews I really like seeing, but no one ever says like, oh, that's a really good question. Everyone's always like, oh, like this interview is fantastic. Like, this player is so like charismatic. This player is so candid. He's so, so much personality. And meanwhile, I'm like, hey, I had to ask a really hard-hitting question.
Yeah. I helped open them up. Yeah.
I poked the bear. Yeah. But I guess that's a part of it, right? I think the thing that I find most rewarding is those content that goes like on Reddit or Twitter, where people are like, oh, this interview was super good. Like, look what X, Y, or Z said. That's enough for me. That really is enough for me. And I think that's the days where I feel like I've done a good job. Because like you said, everybody has their favorite analysts and casters, but I don't know many people that maybe do have their favorite hosts. Yeah.
So look, let's talk a little bit about the work, just working in Valorant specifically as a host and as on-air talent, because I call the talent pool at the moment, it's essentially the viper's nest. It's not anyone's fault. I'm not saying everyone's a snake. There are snakes, but it's a very hostile environment to be in, and you are likely to get bit. And what I mean by that is my perception of kind of the lay of the land is that there are way more members of talent than there are jobs to go around. There are a number of people engaging in weird, fucked up practices that, while not nefarious or against any rules, they sort of violate an unspoken ethical code, like undercutting, right? You talk to your friends and say, oh, hey, well, how much are you getting paid for this event? I just want to know, and you're honest, and then they fucking go to a tournament organizer and say, I'll do it for half of what that bitch is doing it for, and that goes on all the time. And so you've got that, and also you've got games developer that are known for being very controlling, and they really want to have as more like the most amount of input into who actually commentates or hosts their events. So how have you been finding it? Because I think right now Valorant is the one where I'm like, man, not everyone's going to get out of that alive, you know?
I think the regional splits are different, because I hear a lot of different stories from, all sorts of regions, like even like the Korean region and how they're getting on, NA and so on. I will say the positives and the things I feel grateful and lucky for is some of the people that I get to work with and how supportive they are, and how like I still see myself as an egg. Like I haven't hatched yet. I'm still kind of like a bit newer. Everyone else has been here for like years and years and years. So, for me, I'm just so grateful that a lot of these people care to kind of be honest with each other and not do the things like you said, like undercutting and stuff, and have nice communication with each other, good feedback, and none of this kind of like weird rattiness. For sure, like in our region we have people like Pansy and Hypog, who I say is the Valorant like flagship duo. Like they're the best duo in the world. I don't want to upset anyone else, but they are, in my opinion. But they're not kind of closing, they're not sort of sitting there being like, oh, we are the number one duo, so we don't give a fuck about anyone else, kind of thing. It's never like that. Like Pansy would help me with VOD reviews in the beginning when I wasn't super confident about my skills and hosting, and there are talent that I know that wouldn't want to do that, because like you said, if we are kind of still competing with each other, there's no incentive for someone to try and help me if they could take my place, that just wouldn't exist. But people that I've managed to surround myself with have been so kind of helpful with trying to have us stay as the core that we know could work and could put on a great show. Like we help each other and we're trying to achieve the same goal, albeit not everybody has that goal in mind. Not everybody wants to do that, and not everybody cares enough about the product or whatever to do that. But at least I think in EU, it took a while for us to get here, but we've like harnessed a nice, I feel like, environment with each other where we can do that. But the external things that we can't control, things like whether we're going to be hired or not, whether we're going to be getting events, I think that is something that I personally struggle with, just because like the uncertainty is quite scary. I guess I'm lucky that I do have like a full-time job. Like hosting is like a freelance gig, a part-time thing for me. But kind of the unknown of like, oh, what's going to happen next season, or who is actually going to get brought back and who isn't, and all of this stuff, it is, I think, it's going to be stressful for anybody to deal with, really. And I think the one thing I would like to have in the industry in general is kind of like the how do I say it, not requirements, but expectations. Because sometimes I have no clue if I'm hitting any expectations from a show's perspective. Like I might be hitting the expectation of my producer that I didn't fuck up a single break, that I tossed correctly to everything. Maybe I fulfill the expectation of the fans that it was entertaining, but there's really nothing, there's no bar. Sometimes the bar is like here with what we should be doing. Sometimes it's up here. And any kind of that sort of direction, I think would really help, because again, like you said, a new game, like no one really knows how we should be doing things. I mean, even with something like Counter-Strike, you have shows that are vastly different. Like a Blast show is not going to be the same as like an ESL show, for example. But in Valorant, I don't think we've really set a certain standard yet.
I think probably the reason for that is, I mean, there's still a sifting process going on. Again, it sounds really clinical, but like it just is what's happening, and that is that basically Riot is sort of making determinations about who eventually will be included in their regional broadcasts for when this has a more homogenized circuit, be it a franchise league or whatever they decide to do in the future. And so as a result of that, I almost feel it's like they're letting the broadcast sort of organically find where it is so they can see what kind of things people are going to bring to the table. I mean, you just did the most recent champions. I mean,
that
fucking talent pool.
Oh my gosh,
is insane.
We're so lucky.
Yeah.
Like honestly, the amount of years I watched Sean Gares and like Potter, and yeah, I still cannot believe that I got to work with Sean, but that was just insane. Like some of the talent that we've poached. I don't know how you feel about all the talent moving to Valorant and stuff, but I feel very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, for me, look, so it's different. So Pansy was treated terribly by the CS community. I mean, outrageous. Basically, they tried to drive her out. Then she didn't go, but she did other games. Then they all pretended she'd gone, and then they all just started piling on to Semler, and he left. And then everyone's like, man, I really miss Pansy. Actually, yeah, Pansy and Machine used to have great chemistry with the McCasters. Oh, no, I actually promised Pansy. Yeah, it turns out she's a fucking future Hall of Famer commentator that you all treated like shit with your snarky comments. And it's like everything. Everyone always misses them when we push them out or drive them away. And it's like the sad reality is 95% of the criticism Pansy got wasn't even earnest. It was just, let's just join in today's internet dog pile. And people don't realize what they're contributing to when they do that. It's just a comment for you. It's like a way to fill your coffee break, assuming you have a job. Most of them don't. But what you're contributing to is potentially like something really negative and for the scene. So I'm happy that Pansy's on Valorant because
she's the best.
She'll hate me for saying this, by the way. But she was fucking slumming it in PUBG. Like there was so much good talent in PUBG that like the broadcast size just never fucking lived up to that. Like Hypox's another one. I've had the pleasure of working with him. Like it doesn't surprise me that guy's risen in another esport. Obvious. So Pansy was driven out. She's the queen. Love her to bits. Sean Gares. I get why he doesn't do it in CS. I'd love to see him on. I wish he'd stayed in and been an analyst because he would have been at the top with like Maniac and Sponge, and Sponge is a commentator now, so and Yanko as well, I should say. DDK, I think he felt he was.
I forgot about DDK.
Yeah, I think he kind of felt he was a little bit boxed in because him and James maybe weren't like the top tier, and there was a ton of drama at the major, and I won't dredge that up again. But I think maybe him and James kind of felt that they weren't going to get opportunities anymore. So you have to go with the workers. But I mean, in general, what's been great about Valorant is that it really has brought together people who I think were, and I shouldn't even leave out Potter. Potter was a blossoming talent.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
She's such a cool person, and she was doing great work over at Flashpoint when Duncan picked her up for that, and she was brilliant. And it's sad that we didn't get to see what she could have been in CS:GO. But like I say, the good thing about Valorant is it's bringing together people from all these disparate games that maybe didn't get as much of a chance to shine. And there's so many cool people that are actually on top of the game right now in Valorant. It's great.
I mean, now you've mentioned all those names and I'm thinking about it. Yeah, Dan and DDK and Sean, they did super good at Champions and they've done so well in Valorant. And yeah, I think we did pretty good poaching people. Like even in my region, we poached Tom and Mitch from Counter-Strike and they've done super good in Valorant. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, I feel so lucky. Like I get to work with these people. Although I will say like Maniac, I would give a lot to get a chance to work with Maniac. Like when I was watching the major with you guys, he was insane. I was like taking notes, everything that he was saying.
He actually dials it down on broadcast. Can you believe that? He's more fucking hype off the camera.
I feel like sometimes I'm like, there's no way he's not reading. I was like, does he have a teleprompter? Like, how is everything so like coherent all the time?
I mean, he's like a super smart dude as well. I mean, like he speaks like ton of languages. Obviously he's Swiss, so that comes with the territory a little bit. But he's got like a doctorate or something, or masters in in psychology. And he's always been like a real emotional dude, like loves esports, loves the game. First time I ever interviewed him, he was reminiscing about the clutch he'd made in the game, in the series that I was sort of interviewing him after, and he's like welling up with fucking emotion, like just a fucking super heart on his sleeve kind of guy. So yeah, I hope you get to work with him too. I love working with him.
Yeah, come to Valorant, Maniac.
I don't. It'd be a long time.
He did one Valorant event. I remember. I think he did one event.
Yeah, wasn't it with?
I think.
Yeah,
in 2020. It was like in 2020.
Yeah, because that was before as well. Like he was another guy. He did shit. What was it? I should know this. It was. Oh, I can't even remember. But yeah, he did do a Valorant event. But that was before. I mean, like, you know, he's another guy who just got slept on in Counter-Strike. Like, you know, people are like, oh yeah, you know, he seems cool. It's like, dude, the guy's a fucking genius. And he's super presentable. He's a genius and super entertaining. Like, what more? Like, if he doesn't meet the standard, like, what the fuck are we all doing? You know?
Yeah, there's no hope for the rest of us, basically.
But yeah, so I mean, look, overall, you know, I think you should feel pretty good, right? Because you've had this continual endorsements from like Riot and tournament organizers. It's not like you did first strike and then you were on the outside looking in for the rest of it. I mean, you have just done the biggest Valorant event.
Yeah, my goal was to just do one event last year. I was like, if I could just get one under my belt, everything's Gucci. So I just feel super grateful, honestly. I did not expect to be where I am now, especially during the whole first strike thing. I was like, yeah, my life is over. Nice to know you guys. But yeah, I just have to be grateful. And obviously, like, because I live with a ultra competitor who's also very ingrained in the scene. And also as a pro player, your career is even more volatile. Like it's quite literally like one day you're the hot thing, the next day everybody wants you kicked. It's crazy how quickly people turn on you. And I think I learned so much from Boaster because people turn on him super fast and he doesn't care. And I think he lives this kind of life of, he tried to go pro for 7 years and he never made a pro. I think only on one team was he ever paid, and I think that was XL for Counter-Strike. But chasing it for 7 years, finally making it, he's like, well, I've made it now. I'm not going to let a bunch of people that think I should be kicked affect me. Because when it takes you that long to achieve something, like, you just got to be grateful that you're there. You can't focus on like maybe losing out on that opportunity. And I think that's how I feel. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Because you never know. Like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty, and you've experienced it yourself as well, where sometimes you don't even need to do anything wrong for someone not wanting to hire you. Like, it's just that's just life. You can't control it.
Yeah.
But having said that, hopefully that doesn't happen.
No, I mean, like, I think you're in a good spot. Now, like I said, the reality is that, you know, you've worked that top you know, tournament with that, like, just an elite level of talent, and honestly, the community, I know you're probably not going to believe this, but I mean, I'm like genuinely shocked when you were telling me people say mean things to you or like on Twitter in bulk. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, everyone's got their haters. That's just life. But I mean, like, I think the community seem to like you. I think they've moved on from First Strike, right?
Oh yeah, I think I've been fortunate that I've integrated myself with a community I really care about, which is the Turkish Valorant community. And they don't fuck around. Like, if they want to drown out some haters, they will do it. And yeah, I absolutely love them. I love the Turkish community, which people people are very cynical. This is the other thing I've learned about the internet. Everybody is so cynical about everything, because I'm really involved with the Turkish community. I just love their players. I love their fans. And surprise, newsflash, if someone's going to be nice to me, I'm going to like you. Like, if you're nice to me and you're kind to me and you're not problematic, it's not out of this world for me to respond with a similar sentiment. But people seem to have this kind of view that if you if you prop up a community publicly, you're trying to milk them for likes. What am I
Yeah.
gonna do with likes? Likes does not put food on my table. Like, likes does not help me.
Yeah, I mean, look, so I can see that. I
It's
mean,
just the
because
cynicism. It's
yeah, but
strange.
we really do
Yeah.
have some cynical motherfuckers in our game as well, right? I mean, like, you know, influencers. You know, it used to be a time when if you did a broadcast, you would just turn up, rock the show, go back to your fucking hotel room, rinse and repeat till you get on your fucking EasyJet flight, and there was just none of the bullshit that came with it. These days, now, I think everyone's like, I watch what they do, and it's like, right, gotta wake up. Here's a picture of my breakfast for my Insta. Now I'm just gonna do my fucking gym routine on Snap, and I got to tweet out about this, and let's get this bread. And I just look at all of that, and I just think, like, you know, guys, like, I get it. We're all out there hustling, trying to do stuff, but there's definitely some motherfuckers that concentrate more on that than doing a good job.
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, if I'm putting out a piece of content, you betcha I'm gonna try and retweet that stuff and try and get people to watch it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
obviously,
it's the only reason to be on
yeah.
Twitter, isn't it? I mean, for real.
But I mean, just the fact that, like, I even after the first strike stuff and whatever else I go through, I've had like a group of people that consistently message me with nice comments, and their players consistently tell me their stories and tell me how, you know, let's be honest, there's no English kind of media that brings non-English language like stories to the general English speaking world anyway, and that especially does not exist for Turkey. Like, people are not writing about Turkish players, you know, for the English speaking audience, and hearing their stories. Their economy is like crazy fucked. Like, people can't even afford PCs, but somehow they have some of the best Valorant players in the world, but some of them can't even afford PCs. So for me, that's like it piqued my interest. I'm like, what? How is that? How has this happened? Of course, I'm going to want to get to know you more. In general, I love their culture as well. But you're always going to get people that say, no, you're not being sincere. You're just milking them for their money, whatever. Which to me, I just makes me want to kind of inject some energy into the world to make people less cynical. Like, we are allowed to appreciate people. We are allowed to like things because we like them, not because some ulterior motive, which I think is just sad at this point. Honestly, I don't know why people don't like hearing stories from other societies and cultures and communities. There's literally there's no negative downsides to getting to know people that you wouldn't usually get to know in real life, you know. So for me, I encourage it. I think if people are interested in my culture, I would definitely give them the time of day. But I think we need to cut the crap sometimes on like, oh, I don't believe this person has genuine intentions. It's not hurting anyone. Like,
it's the one really good thing Valorant's nailed, I would say, like, coming out of the gate. I mean, well, not the one good thing, it's nailed a bunch of stuff, but one thing that's really stood out to me is, you know, this sense of globalness to the game, the way they've crafted their tour, you know, the way it's all structured, the way we're already seeing like international matchups and different scenes, you know, kind of colliding with different styles. All that's like super exciting. And, you know, I don't think there's anything sort of cynical with, like, you know, pointing out here's a region that might not have as many of the resources as these other regions, but they're producing legit talent, and they need somebody to rep them on the English, you know, in the English language information stream. You know, esports has always had people that like understand like niches, like, you know, I mean, it's like Blair, who I worked the major with for years, he was the go-to guy for like Asian Counter-Strike. Like, if you need an English-speaking guy who knows like what's going on in India and, you know, what's going on, you know, in Malaysia, talk to him. He knows all the teams, all the players. And so that having somebody like that is invaluable, because it helps bring the stories to life when eventually one of those teams does make it to a big international event. Same over in League of Legends. So
I just think sometimes the English speaking kind of communities forget that other people exist. It's very much like the whole like, our scene.
The internet is American, right?
Yeah, Yeah. Actually, I did watch a video. This is such a tangent about when they were making like the amendments for the laws back in like the 1800s, whatever it was. One of the amendments that didn't actually get passed in the end was to rename America the United States of the Earth instead of, but that was rejected, as you can imagine. But that kind of sums up the internet.
Yeah. Here's something that I want to talk to you about. It hasn't been in a very coherent order because
oh, that's okay.
We've been talking, but don't worry, it's a podcast, not meant to be. Obviously we've talked a lot about your journalism, talked some about your broadcast stuff, but obviously as well, and I did this too, you've been the manager of an organization, right? Which was Summon FC,
a team. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm overselling it really by calling it an org. No, but you were a manager of a team, Sage Ult Mainan Football Club, aka Summon FC.
Yeah.
And obviously that was the team that went on to be acquired to Fnatic. Now, all joking aside, tell me about being a manager of a team and getting that team into a big org like Fnatic. I think that's an interesting story.
Don't do it. My advice is don't do it. Don't become the mother of 4 18-year-old boys and the girlfriend of one. It's so stressful. But yeah. I think when like me and Jake both moved to Valorant both at the same time, where the beta came out and he hopped on the beta, was I'm gonna go pro, and I was like, oh, there's a gap in terms of like doing interviews and stuff, which is a whole other thing because I worked for the Spike.gg, who didn't pay me, and it was a whole other thing. But we kind of both went into this game and both were like, oh, we can work together on this, where like I'll teach you a little bit more about the game, you try and get me like media trained and more kind of higher profile, try and get orgs to kind of notice us. So my job was literally basically probably less stressful than a real manager. I say real manager because this was just me volunteering to try and get the boys into tournaments, get them noticed, media train them. I actually sat them down for a day and media trained every single one of them one-on-one, because I was like, you guys are good like players, but what you don't understand is that if you don't have a brand, like these big orgs like Fnatic are just going to pick up a team that has your Draken, you know, has your Scream, like all these people that already have brands from Counter-Strike that moved over. These are like Fortnite kids, someone that came from Rust, and Chak, a UKCS Counter-Strike player. And I was like, guys, you need something else to make you stand out.
Friend of mine, Costas, funnily enough, because he used to be a Counter-Strike Source player, and he was a regular on a website I used to edit called Cadred. I was an editor for that, and I even played for the UK Counter-Strike Source team in clan base against a Greek team that I think had him in it.
Did you win?
I think we did beat Greece, actually.
Ooh.
I wrote a blog about it. It's I totally forgot. Basically, what happened was I sort of knew the admin, because I had no place being anywhere near a competitive game. But I knew the admins, and they made me the sort of manager of the team, and I knew all the pros. So I basically put myself in for a few games that I thought we could win anyway, just so I could say I'd played for the UK team. Like absolute abuse of power,
ex-pro
piece of shit. Yeah. And now I'm an ex-pro. Yeah, but yeah, I know Sack from that. I used to might even interviewed him at a few like Epic Lands and I series and stuff.
Yeah, so obviously him and Bosa were the only two people that were over the age of 20 on that team. So Doma was 16. And Dinks was a Russian player. I think he was 18. But when the boys came together, it was kind of like starting from scratch. Nobody really knew who these guys were. They were one of many unsigned teams. There were loads and loads of unsigned teams. And Boaster kind of, and we had a coach, Minnie, who was also came from UKCS. And those two were kind of in charge with like booking pracs and just playing, like focusing on that. And I basically just spend all my time running the social media, trying to find tournaments for them to enter into. And then as they started to get more and more noticed, we did this thing where after every single official they had, we did a post-match interview on their Twitter, because if no one was going to interview them, I was bloody gonna interview them and get their personalities out there somehow. And we'd upload like content. Honestly, people used to think we were in an org because we had like content, like voice comms, that kind of stuff that we're putting out that orgs do. So actually a couple of orgs that wanted to sign the boys thought would ask us for a buyout, and I was like, no, we're not signed. We don't have a buyout. And eventually some of the bigger names came to us, and I sat in so many meetings, boring meetings, hearing empty promises. There was one org, a big, I won't name them, but a pretty reputable org that was offering a really sizable salary, and the boys were kind of deciding between this org or Fnatic, and they weren't quite sure, and in the end they went with Fnatic. A good thing they did, because this org ghosted us and they never replied again, and they still haven't picked up a Valorant team yet. So I'm looking forward to seeing when they do, because this was in 2020 when they told us they wanted to sign Summon. And we also had some, I'd say, pretty dodgy like offers. It made me see orgs in a whole new light, because I've only ever dealt with them from like a journalist perspective.
Yeah.
And some of these negotiations and some of the offers and some of just like the slave wage, I would say, that people, I remember one of the first teams that wanted to sign Jake, offered him a contract that was like £300 for 12 months, like not £300 a month for 12 months, £300 for 12 months. And I was just like, this cannot be real. Like, this is a org, this isn't an actual org that's giving us a contract saying that we're going to put you under, like, legally have you for 12 months, and we're going to pay you £300 for a year.
I saw some unbelievable gangster shit at the start of Valorant. I mean, I even tweeted at one of the teams telling them, like, you need to stop doing it, Team Basilisk. I said, like,
what do they do?
Oh, I'll tell you off this podcast. It is fucking unbelievable, the shit they were getting up to. And then there's one of, like, I used to get an email or a DM from, because I still look over contracts for kids, you know, like I just do it in my spare time. Tell them, don't sign that, don't sign this, you know, because like they don't fucking know what they're getting into. But like Valorant was just gangland at the start. It was I mean, we've only barely just put that behind us, honestly.
Oh yeah. And yeah, like I said, I didn't expect some of the, like, there were some orgs that I spoke to that like are insanely big in the world that I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. But it was just like months of that over and over again, definitely telling the boys like, hey, don't tweet that, come on, like, we want to get signed, just chill out, don't tweet that, otherwise take that tweet down, come on. So I was basically just the mum really for these boys, telling them like what to do, mainly just trying to get their names out there, you know, like whether it was like memes or content, interviews, whatever. The media training I was quite proud of, because I saw them do broadcast interviews like later on, and a couple of them had to do it with me, and they smashed it, and you could not tell that they've never done an interview ever before. And that for me was like a huge advantage in their corner, where if you want to sign and unsigned teams, you have every single one of them could do interviews, and every single one of them before they were signed had done a broadcast interview, which I thought was kind of unheard of at that point. And to really drill into them, like to build a brand really before they get signed. And yeah, and then Fnatic kind of came knocking, and I was so happy. I was like, take my job. They're not my problem anymore. Like, good luck.
It was just like that. I mean, wasn't there an option for you to get folded into the Fnatic management?
There was an option always with every org we spoke to, but I categorically was like, nah, it's okay. Like, you,
for real?
take them. Yeah, it's so stressful. Maybe because they are young boys, and I'm, at the time when I was dealing with this, I was 26, I'm 28 now. And like Doma was 16, like he's 10 years younger than me. And sometimes, like, as cheeky and kind of like endearing as he is, I'm like, giving me a headache. Like, come on, just boys, just listen, do this or do that or get on with it. But not a life for me. I think they're just too young.
Yeah, I mean, it is like stressful, but I mean, there's like, so one time I managed a team where basically we went to an event. It was a CGS qualifier. I'm sure you heard all about CGS. And I took a team of UK players down who I was like friends with, still friends with like most of them to this day. And the prize, if we won, was they got they got picked up by the CGS org and will be managed by someone else, not me anymore. And it was me basically trying to get them to the promised land. And they fucking tested me to the limits. That whole run was a fucking unprecedented disaster. It ended up with a fight, like a physical fight. In the team. I wrote an article about it afterwards called the $500,000, the 500K slap, because like this roughneck that used to work on the oil rigs that happened to be good at Counter-Strike called Gandolfini, like he'd lifted this guy off the floor with a slap, like he was a big, strong dude. But he did that after being called a cave-dwelling cunt because he didn't wash up some plates. So we completely shit the bed, completely fucked it. And I was losing my mind. It was the most stressful stuff, but I wanted to do it for them. And had they got in, I would have forgotten all the bad shit and I just would have felt immense pride. So in many ways, you got to live my dream.
Yeah. To be fair, mine wasn't nearly as bad as what you had to deal with. I just had to deal with teenage problems, just teenagers.
Right.
But I was like, thank fuck they got signed. Like someone else can kind of take all of these administrative stuff. But I think also because I was hosting and doing my journalism at the time as well. So it was just like 24/7 I had to do something. But yeah, very rewarding though, like as you can imagine. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the team's been doing well. I know obviously it's probably a point of consternation because they've obviously had some real strong performances and with runners up in Reykjavik for the Masters, right?
Yeah.
And then not so hot this time around, but ran into the big upset team in the form of Crew.
Got out of groups though. I think that was like nobody thought they were going to get out of groups. Everyone
I remember everyone saying that on social.
Actually for me, because people always ask me like how tough is it to watch them lose when you're on the show, because I assume you haven't had to deal with it where you've had a romantic connection with someone that you're hosting. I don't want to presume, just in case.
No.
But everyone's always like, oh, it must be so tough. It's actually not that hard. It's if anything, it's harder when I'm not hosting, when I have to just watch them and I have nothing else to preoccupy myself with and I lose. It's heartbreaking. But when I'm hosting, I just get on with it. It's not you feel sad later. You don't have time to feel sad there,
also as well, it's like you said earlier, you're in a different headspace.
Yeah, you don't think about
when you work in a tournament, right? Because it's like, can't be sad for Boaster because I've now got to do a segment on how shit Fnatic work. Right?
I have done that. I have
It's just like broadcast you isn't you.
Exactly. I'd say I'm more critical than most people on them because I know the ins and outs of what's happening with them as well. So I definitely feel like more critical as a member of the broadcast because no one else really cares. Let's be honest.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so look, we're sort of on the downslope. So I want to try and make my podcasts as positive as possible for the Valorant community. Because they don't like it when they're all negative, and this one's been pretty nice, pretty positive. So for 2022, as we are still in January, what are your hopes and aspirations for the year moving forward? What would you like to achieve?
File my taxes in 8 days because I still need to do that.
Don't fucking remind me, dude.
I was meant to do it yesterday, but I didn't have.
Been on the phone to my accountant, like going, can we just fucking? Is there any way? No, all right, okay, good.
It's the receipt uploading part that I'm particularly bad with. Like I've done everything else. Yeah. 2022, I think I'd be really pissed if I die before the Lord of the Rings series comes out.
Fingers crossed.
That I live that long, that will be, I'm quite happy for that in 2022.
I think it's gonna be ass, dude.
No,
I
No,
know.
I
Listen,
think,
I'm a
yeah,
massive Lord of the Rings nerd, but I think it's going to be ass.
I think it's going to be ass, but I think I'm going to refuse to admit that it's going to be ass. I think it's going to be one of
I
those
like
things.
it. Double down.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah. It's like some of the Marvel TV shows that I've, in hindsight, have felt like has
All
been
ass,
like,
all of them.
I like WandaVision, but Loki for me, I really like Loki, but then I thought about it after. I was like, oh, it was okay. Yeah. Wasn't the best. But career-wise, honestly, I think I just want to do things where I want to do myself justice. I think I want to be a little bit more self-serving in a sense that I want to be doing things that I find rewarding, I find productive, and I find like positive enough to bring to the community. If I could, because I do get girls message me sometimes, which really, really warms my heart, where they're like, hey, I don't even like speaking in a video game because I get criticized, but hearing what you're doing, like, it makes me more confident in my own opinions in gaming. And yeah, that for me is huge. Like, knowing that I have that kind of impact for me is enough. Like, I don't need more than that. So I just want to make sure that this year I do keep doing those things, and it'd be nice to host like bigger events and stuff. But even if I don't get to do that, but I can still make a difference, whether it's through my journalism or if I get more opportunities to make content, then I'd be pretty happy with it. I think, like I said, last year was so negative and I spent so much of it just in a slump that I don't think it's it's time to move on now. Like, I can't throw too many pity parties. Just gotta get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you'll be all right. The Viper's Nest shall not claim you.
We'll see.
The Vipers won't get you anyway. I don't know if there's something else around the corner, but no, I think the future for Valorant is going to be super interesting. As I said, this year, I think we're going to see a big changing of the guard with the players. I think we're going to see new teams emerge. Very interested, actually. I saw, and I haven't been able to sort of corroborate this independently. I saw there was an announcement that, like, what was it, Team Spirit and some of the big Russian org didn't want to get into Valorant. All of a sudden, they said they looked at it and then they said, "Oh no, the space it's too crazy." So it's interesting. I think what's going to start happening is we're going to get. It's going to streamline. Is the word. That's what's going to happen. And I think that's going to apply to the talent pool as well. I think some people are probably going to get told, like, really,
it's like we're in Fortnite in real life, like battle royale in real life.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Riot Games pull you into a room and say, "I think we should see other people."
Oh no, not me.
So,
I refuse. One thing though, because I know you said like changing the old guards, maybe some of the older players getting weaned out, but God B, I want to see him win a major event because he's been doing so good. He's been doing super good. And
great guy too.
And he's so nice. Exactly. Yeah. I think him succeeding is a prime example how everyone else would try and emulate that kind of energy and behavioral pattern and respect. That is just fundamentally good for the whole scene. So I'm really getting behind God B this for 2022.
Good. Yeah, and again, I'll have to tell you about the time we lived together for a brief period of time in Vegas.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. Just in case you thought there isn't anything ridiculous, I haven't done an esports.
Oh no!
Me and God B lived together for about 5 months in a mansion in Vegas. Listen, great guy. Didn't annoy me once. Super cool person. He was working very hard. So yeah, just a legend. Well, look, speaking of legends, it's been great to talk to you as well.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, long overdue to sort of chew the fat. And listen, the final thing I just want to say is that I know this won't help, but just, this is an industry where sometimes fuck 'em is just the right attitude to have. And it's tough because it's an industry where we want everybody to get along. We want everybody to be friends. We want it to be like an anime, but it's just not. It just can't be that way because it's sports, and peace was never an option. So I don't. If you ever get a DM from me saying, "Yo, Yinsu, you've gone way off the fucking deep end," you've probably gone way off the fucking deep end.
Yeah. Okay.
But otherwise, just keep repeating in your head, "Fuck them." That's it. Okay.
It does help. Thank you. Yeah.
No worries. Good. So there you have it. That was Yinsu Collins, everybody. Be sure to follow her on Twitter, which should be on the screen now if Sam's done his job. And also check out all the content she makes and support her when she's on a broadcast. I think she's great. That's not that you need my endorsement, Yinsu.
I'll take it. What do you mean? Oh my God.
But anyway, so please support her. She's awesome. And thanks so much for coming on the show. That was it. It was the Richard Lewis Show, where I talk to somebody for some time and then it stops. I will be doing that again with somebody else sometime soon. I don't know who. I never do, but it'll be awesome. So make sure you tune in, like, comment, subscribe, all that Zoomer shit, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.